नमस्कार। पद्माकर जी, हम लाइव हैं अभी? अच्छा, अभी सब लोग हमसे जुड़ चुके हैं। हाँ, नमस्कार। आज 7वां अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस मनाया जा रहा है और यह योग दिवस अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस है। पूरे विश्व में आज योग दिवस मनाया जा रहा है। अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस के अवसर पर आप सभी को हार्दिक बधाई एवं शुभकामनाएं। हमारे साथ जुड़ गई हैं डॉक्टर रीमा दादा जी। मैं उनका इस कार्यक्रम में हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। मैं स्वागत करता हूं पृथ्वी विज्ञान मंत्रालय के माननीय सचिव महोदय डॉक्टर राजीवन साहब का। मैं स्वागत करता हूं सुश्री इंदिरा मूर्ति, संयुक्त सचिव पृथ्वी विज्ञान मंत्रालय। मैं उनका इस कार्यक्रम में हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं। डॉक्टर गोपाल अयंगर साहब का मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं और आईआईटीएम के निदेशक प्रोफेसर रविशंकर नंजुंडैया साहब का मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं इस कार्यक्रम में। और इस कार्यक्रम में मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं भव्या खन्ना जी का, जो इस कार्यक्रम को संयोजित कर रही हैं पृथ्वी विज्ञान मंत्रालय की ओर से। और आईआईटीएम के प्रशासनिक अधिकारी श्री अजीत प्रसाद जी का मैं हार्दिक स्वागत करता हूं, जिनका सहयोग और सानिध्य सदैव इन कार्यक्रमों में हमारे साथ बना रहता है। मैं अब अनुरोध करूंगा हमारे संस्थान के निदेशक महोदय प्रोफेसर नंजुंडैया सर, कृपया इस कार्यक्रम से पहले हमारे मार्गदर्शन के लिए 2 शब्द कहें।
धन्यवाद शुक्ला जी। डॉक्टर रीमा दादा एवं अन्य गणमान्य व्यक्तियों, देवियों और सज्जनों, आपको आज योग दिवस पर आप सभी को बधाई देता हूं। पूरे विश्व में आज 7वां अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस मनाया जा रहा है। 21 जून 2015 को पहला योग दिवस मनाया गया था। जैसे कि भारत देश की उदारतम संस्कृति जो वसुधैव कुटुंबकम की भावना रखती है, इसके साथ सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः की कामना भी करती है। ऐसी संस्कृति में जन्मे माननीय प्रधानमंत्री श्री मोदी जी ने अपने प्रयासों से हमारी प्राचीन योग की पद्धति को पूरे विश्व में पहुंचाने की पहल की है। परिणाम स्वरूप विश्व में आज लगभग 175 देशों में उत्साहपूर्वक यह मनाया जा रहा है और इसे स्वीकार किया है। आज पूरे विश्व में योग लोगों की जीवन की शैली बन चुकी है। योग के द्वारा शारीरिक एवं मानसिक स्वास्थ्य की उपलब्धि ने ही आज कोरोना जैसी महामारी से भी निपटने का मार्ग दर्शाया है। मेरी यही कामना है कि आप सभी नियमित रूप से योग करें एवं तन और मन से स्वस्थ रहें। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद महोदय, योग पर आपका उद्बोधन, आज उसके लिए मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। अब व्याख्यान प्रारंभ होने से पहले मैं 2 शब्द कहना चाहूंगा। योग सनातन परंपरा की बहुत प्राचीनतम विधा है। लगभग 5,500 वर्ष पहले कुरुक्षेत्र में कृष्ण जी ने जब अर्जुन को उपदेश दिया था, उसमें भी उन्होंने योग की शिक्षा दी थी। तो सर्वप्रथम योग की शिक्षा कृष्ण द्वारा अर्जुन को दी गई। उसके बाद उसे पतंजलि जी ने जो है लिपिबद्ध किया, यानी लिखा। पतंजलि जी ने उसका संकलन किया और लिखा, और पतंजलि जी से हमारे अनेक ऋषियों ने इस परंपरा का निर्वाह किया। वस्तुतः योग की आवश्यकता क्यों है, इस पर तो चर्चा करेंगी माननीय डॉक्टर रीमा दादा जी, लेकिन मैं केवल 2 शब्द कहना चाहूंगा। योग की आवश्यकता क्या है? तन और मन से सुखी रहना और तन और मन में एक सामंजस्य स्थापित करना, ये योग का मूल मंत्र है, जिसके आधार पर तमाम ऋषि मुनियों ने हमारे देश में तपस्या की, योग किया और जिससे उन्होंने बड़ी लंबी आयु पाई। वस्तुतः योग करना है स्वस्थ और दीर्घायु रहने के लिए, तन और मन दोनों प्रकार से सुखी रहने के लिए। तो इसीलिए आज पूरी दुनिया को प्रसन्नता चाहिए, खुश रहने के लिए माध्यम चाहिए। इसीलिए पूरे संसार में जो लोग योग के बारे में नहीं भी जानते थे, योग का नाम भारत से सुना और आज पूरी दुनिया में योग का प्रचार प्रसार हुआ। मैं अपना वक्तव्य यहीं समाप्त करता हूं। अब मैं भव्या खन्ना जी से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो कृपया जो है डॉक्टर रीमा दादा का परिचय हमें बताएं और उसके साथ इस कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाने का कष्ट करें। भव्या खन्ना जी।
Namaste. It is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Rima Dada. Dr. Rima Dada, MD, PhD professor at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, AIIMS, New Delhi, is actively involved in teaching, diagnostics, counseling, and research. She has won several awards at international and national conferences and platforms for her work. She has been also widely covered by the media, including regional media, for her work on the effectiveness of yoga to manage and treat several diseases. Dr. Rima has kindly agreed to be our speaker for today and enlighten us with a lecture entitled Complex Diseases, Yoga, Unravelling the Pharmacy Within. In the past year or so, we have truly understood that health is wealth. In such a scenario that we are also dealing with at present, this lecture becomes imperative, important, and I think useful for all of us. I will request all participants and our viewers here to actually post their questions and inputs in the chat box, and I will request our distinguished speaker to take up these questions later on. Uh, without taking much time now, I will request our distinguished guest and speaker for today, Dr. Rima Dada ji. Ma'am, please take over the session and enlighten us with your lecture now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Please accept my heartiest felicitations on the 7th International Day of Yoga. And I thank the Secretary, Mr. Rajivan, as well as Dr. Dastidar for inviting me to deliver this talk on yoga, which is a profound science of well-being. As we know that yoga is a mind, body, and it's a non-pharmacological intervention, but it plays a key role in prevention of diseases, promoting health, wellness, and also as a powerful adjunct in the management of diseases, and also has a rehabilitative potential. Yoga has tremendous transformative power and causes dynamic changes in gene expression, and that is how it is able to unravel the pharmacy within. So first of all, I'll explain to you what are complex diseases. Now, complex diseases are diseases which are also known as lifestyle diseases or multifactorial diseases, because here they occur due to an interplay between the genes and the environment. Let me highlight to you that, emphasize to you that genes play, it was initially believed that genes play a critical role in determining our biology, our health and disease states. But now we know that the environment acts on the genes and can change the expression of the genes without any change in the nucleotide sequence. And that is known as epigenetics. So 80 to 85% of our biology, our health and disease states are determined by our epigenotype, which is against the concept of genetic determinism, which emphasizes that our genes determine our health and disease states. So there are complex diseases in which there are a number of genes, and each gene has a small additive effect, and it interacts with the environment. Now, when I talk of the environment, it's the external environment and also the lifestyle and what we eat, whether we are sedentary, whether we practice something like yoga, whether we do meditation. These interact with the genes and result in the onset of various diseases. Now, it's been seen in the recent years, there has been a steep increase in the incidence of complex lifestyle diseases. For example, like cancers, autoimmune diseases, depression, unexplained infertility, they have shown a steep increase, and this has been largely explained to a very rapid change in our lifestyle. As we shifted from a hunter-gatherer society to a society which was largely sedentary, a society which is having food which is highly processed, rich in trans fats, salts and sugars, we find that this food, which is calorie dense and which is very nutriently depleted food, this food actually is a highly inflammatory food and is responsible for a steep increase in the incidence of these complex lifestyle diseases. We also find that as more and more, many of us are having food from outside because it is easy to get, and we are promoted by these market narratives to have food from outside because it's cheap, it's tasty. We also find that there has been an increase in the epidemic of obesity. Also, along with that, a steep increase in the incidence of these complex lifestyle diseases. So it's important to understand that genes, though they do determine our biology, but our lifestyle has a very important role because it modulates the expression of the genes and determines their behavior. So even without any of the changes in the nucleotide sequence, we can change the expression pattern of our genes by our lifestyle and by our thoughts and by our eating habits. It's important then to understand that good habits, for example, like practicing yoga and doing meditation, can switch on good gene programs, which actually promote immune homeostasis, which help to build up mental and emotional resilience, help in promoting wellness. And whereas unhealthy habits like smoking, drinking, stress, anxiety, depression, they actually switch on unhealthy gene programs, which actually promote inflammation. And when there is slow chronic inflammation, that sets the stage for autoimmune diseases and even cancer. So what we found is that be it any complex disease, it could be glaucoma, like primary open-angle glaucoma, it could be depression, it could be cancer, it could be unexplained infertility, or it could be any autoimmune disease, they share some common underlying mechanisms. And they set the stage for the onset of complex lifestyle diseases. And with this very rapid change in lifestyle, we find that these diseases, which used to occur at around the age of 55 to 65 to 70 years, we are finding these diseases are occurring at a very, very young age. And we find that people as young as 15, 25 years are having the onset of these complex lifestyle diseases because of their unhealthy habits. So what are the mechanisms which actually lead to complex lifestyle diseases? One of the most important factors is stress, anxiety, and depression. Then oxidative stress, which is the imbalance between the free radical production and the antioxidant mechanisms. Chronic inflammation. Oxidative stress and depression results in accelerated shortening of the telomeres, which are our biological clock. So we tend to age much faster. So our biological age is much more than our chronological age. There is dysregulated gene expression, dysregulated blood flow, and it's been seen that stress, anxiety, and depression and a highly processed inflammatory, or like they say, the standard American diet or the deadly American diet, which I just showed you, which is a diet which is so rich in trans fats, salts, and sugars, also disrupts the gut microbiome. Now we have a very rich ecosystem of a huge number of bacteria in our gut. And these are very, very important because they release certain chemicals which are very critical for our immunity as well as for our mental health. And you will see that in this age of super specialization, when we have a very targeted approach to combat diseases, yoga is a mind-body intervention and targets each of these factors. And I'll be discussing about a few diseases and show you that how each of them form the basis of these and how yoga is able to combat all of them. So first thing that I'll talk to you about is unexplained male factor infertility. And as you all know, that it is believed that infertility is a problem of the female, but it's interesting to know that in approximately half the cases, the problem actually lies in the male, and about 30 to 40% of men in the reproductive age group have a defect in the sperm production. It's also important to know that there has been a steep increase in the incidence of male factor infertility, along with a decline in the male reproductive health and increase in the incidence of gonadal cancers. And this steep increase cannot be explained by genetics alone. And it's been seen that a lot of these endocrine disrupting chemicals which are found in these plasticizers, which are phthalates, these are endocrine disrupting chemicals. A lot of insecticides, pesticides, smoking, excessive use of cell phone, alcohol consumption, processed foods, and also intake of non-veg food, which builds in these endocrine disrupting chemicals into the protein. And this inflammatory diet actually exposes us to a high levels of free radicals. And of all the cells in the human body, the sperm is a cell which is most vulnerable to environmental insults and oxidative stress. And today I would talk not on the cases which have low sperm count or they are azoospermic, but in those cases which appear normal, where there is a normal sperm count and they are normal as per the WHO guidelines, but yet they are infertile. Now, these are the cases which usually go in for assisted conception, like test tube babies. And in these cases, we have found that they have not only oxidative stress, but high levels of sperm DNA damage, which is the single largest cause of defective sperm function. Now, why is the sperm so vulnerable to environmental insults? As I told you, that of all the cells in the body and even the egg, the sperm is most vulnerable to environmental factors, and the reason being that during its development, it sheds majority of its cytoplasm, so it sheds majority of its antioxidants. And because it has a very compact head, the nucleus is highly compact crystalline toroid, majority of its repair mechanisms are silent. Only 15% of the sperm DNA remains active, and that has the promoters of key genes which need to remain active because they help in the production of certain mRNA, which are transferred at the time of fertilization, which are critical for early embryonic development, as well as the telomeres are found in this peripheral portion. So this is the peripheral portion which is most vulnerable to environmental factors and oxidative stress. So in our study, we actually found that there were a huge number of factors, majority of which are modifiable. That is like lifestyle factors, like I told you about smoking, alcohol consumption, excessive use of cell phones, psychological stress, and a number of environmental pollutants which all result in oxidative stress. And in addition to that, delayed marriage and having delay in the age of conceiving a child all results in impacting the both the nuclear and the mitochondrial DNA and exposing them to oxidative damage. And as I told you, the sperm is not able to rectify the damage because it has minimal amount of antioxidants and its repair mechanism is largely silent. So what happens? There are a large number of free radicals which are produced, and these free radicals damage both the mitochondrial DNA and the nuclear DNA. When they target the nuclear DNA, they target the telomeres, which are shortened. So we believe that infertility is actually accelerated testicular aging. It results in the production of this adduct. I'll be talking of this adduct a little later also, but I would like to tell you that this is a very, very toxic product because this induces both mutations as well as epimutations, and there is fragmentation of the DNA. Now, this results in the sperm fertilizing the ova and is the cause for not only infertility, but when such sperm actually fertilizes the ova, it also results in repeated spontaneous abortions. It results in repeated implantation failures when they go in to have a test tube babies. It is also the cause for genetic and epigenetics diseases in the offsprings, like there are childhood cancers, complex neuropsychiatric disorders, and majority of the dominant genetic diseases arise from these changes which have occurred in a sperm which is having high levels of oxidative DNA damage. It's also important to know that this damage keeps on accumulating. So we need to practice a healthy lifestyle right from the time we are conceived. So there is now a concept that biological parenting actually begins right from the time we ourselves are conceived. So when parents who want to have a child, when a couple wants to have a child, they start practicing a healthy lifestyle. By that time, the sperm has already accumulated a lot of damage, and it's very important that we get this message that we need to lead a healthy lifestyle and practice healthy social habits. So in our studies, we found that a large population of men have high levels of free radicals, and that causes oxidative damage, and oxidative damage actually targets the ends of the chromosomes, which are the telomeres, which are the guardians of the genome, and they serve as a biological clock. But what's more important is that we found that there are certain levels of free radicals, a critical level, optimal level, which is required to maintain the telomere length, and very low and high levels are detrimental to the telomeres. So we quantified the level. I told you about this adduct, which is an oxidative DNA damage adduct, and the accumulation of this adduct actually causes de novo germline mutations because the sperm is not able to clear the damage, and also induces epimutation. Then you can see that we actually studied the DNA quality of fathers of children who had non-familial sporadic heritable childhood cancer, that is retinoblastoma. The reason why we studied this cancer was that this is found in children. We also studied leukemia, but what I wanted to emphasize here was we took children who had cancer which was not running in the family. This was sporadic. And now it's proven beyond doubt that it is because of the unhealthy lifestyle of the fathers who smoke and drink. They accumulate high levels of DNA damage. And you can see that in fathers who had children who were healthy, the levels of this oxidative DNA adduct is very low. And as the sperm is not able to clear the damage, this damage is passed on to the child. And you can see that in the retinoblastoma patients, the level of this oxidative DNA adduct is also very high. The oocyte tries to clear the DNA damage, but when the level of this oxidative DNA adduct is very high, it tends to accumulate, and then it causes a lot of damage to the, it causes mutations and epimutations, which is the cause of a lot of these dominant genetic disorders as well as childhood cancers. So it results in post-zygotic mutations. So the doctors for combating oxidative stress give us various antioxidants, and we did this double-blind randomized placebo-controlled trial, which has shown that majority of the antioxidants, though they may improve the sperm membrane characteristics, so improving the motility, improving the fertilizing ability, but there is little impact at the level of the nuclear DNA. The DNA damage has actually increased. And this is very, very important, because when you take very high levels of antioxidants so that it may permeate the nucleus and reach the nucleus, that can disrupt various redox sensitive reactions. So it's important to know that antioxidants, very few of them are actually able to impact the nuclear DNA integrity, and the DNA damage persists even after the intake of these antioxidants. So here I wanted to show you that when we studied the DNA quality and the oxidative stress levels, they were significantly higher in these people with retinoblastoma, these fathers, as well as the DNA damage, which should be between 18 to 21%. It was much higher in the fathers of these children. Now I'll show you what is the impact of yoga on the sperm genome and the epigenome. Now these group of men with poor DNA quality underwent the yoga-based intervention, and we find that with practice of yoga, there was a steep increase, a significant increase in the progressive motility, and this coincided with the decline in the reactive oxygen species level. In addition to that, we find that there was an increase in the levels of the total antioxidant capacity. Now, this is very, very important. Now, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine advocates that we need 10 servings of fruits and vegetables every day to combat oxidative stress. And here, definitely, fruits and vegetables would have other phytonutrients as well. But it's important to know that yoga acts on the DNA. It is able to increase the expression of various antioxidant genes. And you can see that the total antioxidant capacity increases when you practice yoga. And in the group that did not practice yoga, we did not find any change in the level of the antioxidant capacity. In addition to that, our study was the first to show that yoga also upregulates the expression of these sirtuins. Now, the sirtuins are longevity genes, and their expression was believed to increase when you take 100 glasses of red wine, which increased the levels of resveratrol and upregulated the levels of sirtuins. And this is the first study to show that yoga upregulates sirtuins levels independent of intake of red wine or caloric restriction. In addition to that, we also found that yoga was increasing the levels of the telomerase. Now, I told you that telomeres are guardians of our genome, and they determine, they are like a biological clock. Now, the telomeres are complex traits. They are also determined by a large number of factors, but the two key factors which determine the telomere length is the telomerase level and activity, as well as the oxidative stress levels. And you can see that yoga is decreasing the oxidative stress levels by decreasing the free radical levels and by upregulating the total antioxidant capacity, and also increasing the level of the telomerase activity. And we also find that post practice of yoga, there was a significant decline in the level of this oxidative DNA adduct. Now, this is a very, very significant finding, because this not only impacts the health of the father, decreasing the incidence of gonadal and extragonadal tumors, but will also impact the health trajectory of the offspring by decreasing the genetic and the epigenetic diseases in the offspring. So we also see that yoga is not only able to impact the DNA, but it also impacts the epigenome, because there is normalization of the free radical levels. And therefore, we see that the methylation marks, these are marks which actually determine that which gene is expressed at a particular time. So there are various marks like the methylation marks, the acetylation marks, which determine the appropriate time of expression of various genes. And we find that with the practice of yoga, there is normalization of the methylation marks. And again, this was the first study to establish that various genes were showing differential methylation, and a large number of genes which promote fertilization, help in implantation, embryonic development, and are very important for sperm development and maturation were showing increased expression, and they were hypomethylated. We also found that with practice of yoga, and this required about 6 months of practice, there was a significant improvement in the DNA quality. Now, this is the pictures by flow cytometry, and here each dot represents the sperm, and the number of sperm towards the x-axis represents the sperm with the damaged DNA. And you can see here that the number of sperm towards the x-axis have gradually decreased as you practice yoga. And this actually shows that there is a significant improvement in the DNA quality when you practice yoga. And I also showed you that the level of oxidative DNA damage also significantly declined when you practice yoga. So yoga is acting both on the genome as well as on the epigenome. Now I will talk of another complex disease, that is rheumatoid arthritis. Now this is a very severe, painful, progressive arthritis which afflicts the joints, and it also causes various extra-articular symptoms. For example, it affects the heart, it affects the lungs, the skin, the brain. And I will just show to you that what are the findings of our randomized controlled trial. Now, when these were randomized controlled trials, so there were two groups of individuals, and one which practiced yoga and the ones who were not practicing yoga. Both the groups were on disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, and you can see that the disease activity score significantly declined after practice of yoga. In addition to that, when you have such severe, progressive, painful, inflammatory arthritis, there is a decrease in the quality of life and high stress levels, and also these people have comorbid depression. And you can see that with practice of yoga, there is a decrease in the severity of depression. To understand how yoga is able to act and how is it able to decrease the severity of the disease, we studied a panel of markers which are dysregulated when there is an autoimmune disease. And you can see that the ESR as well as the C-reactive proteins go down. And this is very important. Now, this is the CRP, which is also increased in COVID. And for this, you are actually given steroids. And so you can see here that yoga is actually unraveling the pharmacy within. It's increasing the expression level of various antioxidants, upregulating the defense mechanisms by increasing serotonin levels, increasing the expression of telomerase. And you can see here that we have put here, this is the panel of the inflammatory cytokines. And for this, you are given numerous drugs. For example, when you have the cytokine storm, as in COVID, you have high levels of interleukin-6, for which again, you're given steroids. And you can see that to combat when you do yoga, you actually decrease the levels. There's a significant decline in the group that practiced yoga, and in the group that did not practice yoga, you do not find any change. Now, interleukin-17 is responsible for the articular symptoms, and interleukin-6 is responsible for the extra-articular symptoms affecting the brain, heart, the lung, the liver. And the tumor necrosis factor actually causes proliferation of the osteoclast, which causes bone erosion. That's caused their joint disfigurement and synovial hyperplasia. So with a decrease in the inflammatory cytokines, and along with that, there's an increase in the expression of various anti-inflammatory cytokines like transforming growth factor beta. And we also find that in those cases which had susceptibility genotypes, means that they had a genotype which predisposes them to develop rheumatoid arthritis. And because of that genotype, there were lower levels of this molecule, that is a non-classical HLA gene molecule. We find that with practice of yoga, there was an increase in the levels of this non-classical HLA gene molecule. Now, this was even a surprise to us because we felt that initially cases with this susceptibility genotype may not show an improvement, but we found that even with this susceptibility genotype, there was an increase in the expression, and thus yoga helped to re-establish immunological tolerance and led to molecular remission because it increased the expression level of various anti-inflammatory cytokines and decreased the levels of various pro-inflammatory cytokines. And as I told you that all these complex diseases have some shared underlying mechanisms, you can see that the levels of oxidative stress goes down, so the level of oxidative DNA adducts, and there's an increase in the expression levels of the antioxidant genes, which increase the total antioxidant capacity. In addition to that, we also find that there are a large number of genes which are dysregulated and which are the target of various pharmacological therapies. And you can see that with practice of yoga, there is a significant change in the expression of genes which are detrimental to the immune system and which dysregulate the immune system, and the genes which are helping to, which are the anti-inflammatory genes which are helping in repair, actually show an upregulation. And we find that there is an improvement in all 4 domains of the quality of life. In addition to understand how is oxidative stress being impacted, we also studied the mitochondrial health. Now, this is the first study to show that yoga impacts the mitochondrial integrity, and this has far-reaching implications not only in rheumatoid arthritis, but in aging as well as in a huge number of mitochondrial disorders and dysfunctions. Now, mitochondria are both the source and the target of free radicals. And it's been seen that yoga targets the mitochondria because it upregulates the expression of various genes which are important for mitochondrial integrity, repair, and in addition to that, it increases the expression of genes which are helping in mitochondrial biogenesis. It also increases the level of this key molecule, which is very important because it helps to maintain the nuclear and mitochondrial DNA crosstalk. In addition to that, this molecule is important for calcium signaling, circadian rhythm, regulating the gene expression, and therefore, yoga, by targeting not only the nuclear DNA, but also by targeting the mitochondrial DNA, decreases the oxidative stress levels and helps to improve the mitochondrial copy number. Now I will talk of primary open-angle glaucoma. And primary open-angle glaucoma is a complex disease. And in this study, we also found that till date, it was believed that yoga can actually, till date, it was believed that intraocular pressure was the only modifiable risk factor. And therefore, it was the target of therapies. But recent studies showed that inflammation, oxidative stress, dysregulated blood flow, enhanced apoptosis of the retinal ganglion cells in the retina, and decrease in the level of various factors which nourish the neurons actually resulted in glaucoma. And therefore, there was accelerated apoptosis of the retinal ganglion cells. But our study has shown that if these people practice yoga, we emphasize in these people actually doing a Nom-Vilom pranayama as well as meditation, we find that there is an increase in the expression of the anti-inflammatory genes, which helps to decrease the inflammation, increase in various factors like neurotrophic factors, factors which are promoting neuroplasticity, factors which are helping to maintain the trabecular meshwork and the antioxidant genes, and the genes which cause inflammation, enhance apoptosis of the retinal ganglion cells actually show a decrease. So I would just like to summarize the findings of the work on glaucoma, that we found that the anti-inflammatory genes were upregulated. Factors which are blocking the outflow tracts of the for the aqueous are showing a downregulation. Factors which are enhancing apoptosis of the retinal ganglion cells show a downregulation, and factors which are promoting, nourishing the neurons, promoting neuroplasticity, helping the synaptic network, nourishing the, helping in transmission along the optic nerve, are actually showing an upregulation. And this is very, very important because just a technique without any side effects is resulting in upregulation of various key factors which are used in the therapy for primary open-angle glaucoma. So this study was recently published in the American Journal of Ophthalmology, and now they have made meditation as a standard practice in the management of open-angle glaucoma. I would then talk of depression, that is major depressive disorders, and depression has reached epidemic proportions also, and we see that a large number of a huge population has high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. And so again, this was a randomized controlled trial. There were two groups, and one was the one in gray is the group which did yoga, and the group that did not do yoga has been shown in black, and you can see that there was a significant decline in the severity of depression. And to understand how was depression being tackled, and normally depression is believed to be a disorder of the mind and usually tackled by cognitive behavioral therapy. But we find that depression is a mind-body disorder. In majority of the complex diseases, there is a psychosomatic component and there is comorbid depression. But if there is depression, it also targets various bodily systems. It results in accelerated aging. And we see that there is an earlier onset of complex lifestyle diseases in people who have depression. So we see that why is yoga able to decrease the severity of depression and tackle stress so effectively is because yoga results in increased production. You can see there is an increase in the levels of various key molecules which are going to nourish the neurons. Now, these are factors which promote neuroplasticity. So we see that with practice of yoga, there are functional changes which are occurring in the brain because there are key molecules which are helping to cause changes in the brain. There is improving synaptogenesis, they are helping in neurogenesis, and studies have shown that functional MRI studies have shown there's an increase in the cortical thickness, there is increase in the white matter, and also you find that there is increase in the gray matter mass, which shows that this is very, very important. And so yoga, when you practice yoga, you can not only people with disease states need to practice yoga, but even as a whole, if we practice yoga, we can increase our concentration, attention, learning, memory, There could be increased mind-body awareness. And so it was so important that even the healthy population practice yoga. Now, one of the key molecules which actually goes down when you practice with people who have depression is serotonin. And majority of the drugs which are sold off the counter are serotonin, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. These are the serotonin analogs, and they have numerous side effects. And you can see that post-practice of yoga, the levels of serotonin actually increase. In addition to that, we found that melatonin levels increase. Now, melatonin is a key molecule which is determining our sleep-wake cycle. And melatonin actually is also a potent antioxidant, and the highest levels are found in mitochondria. And therefore, this also helps in maintenance of the mitochondrial integrity. Now, with the disruption of sleep-wake cycle in people who are depressed, you find that there is disruption of their hormonal milieu because certain hormones also follow a circadian rhythm. Their levels follow the circadian rhythm. And you also find that with disruption of the sleep-wake cycles, the gut microbiome is also affected. So we see that key molecules which are helping to promote neuroplasticity, which are mind-body communication markers, which are helping in bringing about structural and functional changes in the brain, are increasing. And this is helping to decrease the severity of depression. In addition to that, as I told you, there are shared mechanisms. Depression results also in oxidative stress, and this is the reason why you find that because in depression you find there are high levels of cortisol, and cortisol is neurotoxic. So people who are chronically stressed, you find that they have shorter areas of gray matter, the hippocampus is shorter, their amygdala size is bigger, and you find that because there is high levels of cortisol also bears an inverse relationship with the antioxidant capacity. So not only is it neurotoxic, but it also causes oxidative stress, because of which the people tend to age faster. Their biological age is much higher than their actual age. And these people with depression also have high levels of inflammatory cytokines, and therefore you find that when there is stress, anxiety, depression, and it is there for longer periods, these people have higher incidence of complex lifestyle diseases and even autoimmune diseases. And again, what we found is even when there were susceptibility genotypes, those cases also showed improvement post-practice of yoga. And compared to the group which was just on drugs, the group which was practicing yoga showed 60% underwent remission. And all the 4 domains of quality of life showed an improvement post-practice of yoga. Now, I would like to show you that how yoga impacts aging. And as I told you, that complex lifestyle diseases, with an increase in age, you find that there is an onset of these complex lifestyle diseases. And the main target of majority of drugs is that we can increase our longevity. But when we increase our longevity, we should also be having a healthier mind, delay the onset of cognitive decline, as well as the onset of these complex lifestyle diseases. And our studies have shown that because yoga decreases oxidative stress, increases the antioxidant capacity, and increases the telomerase activity, increases the expression of various genes which are upregulating the defense mechanism, decreasing the level of various inflammatory cytokines, which also decrease the levels of inflammation in the brain and decrease the level onset of, delay the onset of cognitive decline, and helps to maintain the telomere length, we can actually reduce our biological age and improve our health span. So what I would like to summarize by telling you that if you integrate yoga into your daily lifestyle and follow the 8 limbs of yoga and have whole foods, whole plant-based foods which are unpackaged, unrefined, unprocessed, we can actually target all the underlying mechanisms which are actually acting together to actually result in complex lifestyle diseases. So we see that yoga decreases stress, anxiety, depression, decreases oxidative stress by increasing the antioxidant capacity, decreases inflammation by upregulating the expression of the genes which are anti-inflammatory, helps to maintain the telomere length, it causes parasympathetic dominance, increases the expression of various genes which are preventing apoptosis, helps to maintain immune homeostasis. We have seen that key molecules, for example, like various T regulatory cells increase, the levels of the T helper 17 cell decrease, so it helps to maintain homeostasis, and various factors. I did not show it here, but we have studied these nitric oxide synthase, which help to regulate blood flow, actually increase, and thus because it regulates the oxidative stress levels, yoga helps to regulate the epigenome, and thus it is able to enhance the expression of various genes which are upregulating our defense mechanisms, which are actually various genes which are used as therapy. So it is unraveling the pharmacy within, And thus yoga is very, very important to integrate into our daily lifestyle if we want to delay or prevent the onset of complex lifestyle diseases. So I would just like to summarize by telling you and end by telling you that yoga targets both the genome and epigenome and plays a very vital role in disease prevention, promotion of health, and in the management of complex lifestyle diseases. Thank you. I'm open for questions. Any questions?
मैडम किसी का कोई प्रश्न आया नहीं है, यानी सभी लोग आपके व्याख्यान से पूरी तरह संतुष्ट हैं और सब लोग समझ गए हैं, इसलिए किसी का कोई प्रश्न नहीं आया है जी। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम, आपका आभार। अभी तक हम योग को सामान्यतः योग के बारे में ही सुनते आ रहे थे, लेकिन योग का वैज्ञानिक संदर्भ हमें नहीं पता था। आज आपने उसको इलाज और चिकित्सा के साथ जोड़कर हमें बताया, बहुत अच्छी जानकारी दी, बहुत बहुत आभार। और दूसरी चीज, हमें एक अधिकार भी मिलता है, अब हम ये संदर्भ भी लोगों को दे सकेंगे कि योग खाली हवा में योग नहीं है, योग विज्ञान के साथ साधित योग है, विज्ञान से प्रमाणित योग है, तो ये हम कह सकेंगे। आपको मैडम बहुत बहुत आभार। और हमारे इस कार्यक्रम में जो मित्र हमारे YouTube से जुड़े हुए हैं, उनका बहुत बहुत आभार, बड़े धैर्य से उन्होंने इतने समय तक सुना, उनका बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। और डॉक्टर राजीवन साहब का, जिन्होंने इस कार्यक्रम की संकल्पना की, हमारे सचिव महोदय, उनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूं। और हमारी संयुक्त सचिव सुश्री इंदिरा मूर्ति जी, उनका भी बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देता हूं। और चैट बॉक्स में मैं देख रहा हूं, अगर किसी का कोई इसमें कोई प्रश्न नहीं आया है। अंत में लास्ट में एक मिनट मैडम, थोड़ा प्रश्न देख रहे हैं। डज योगा क्योर ऑटो इम्यून डिजीज? हाँ, अभी एक प्रश्न आया है मैडम। डज योगा क्योर ऑटो इम्यून डिजीजेस?
I just talked to you about rheumatoid arthritis. It is an autoimmune disease. Definitely, there is a dysregulated immune response. It has to be used in adjunct with modern medicine, and yes, it can help in decreasing the severity of autoimmune diseases and prolonging the periods of remission.
अच्छा मैडम, एक दूसरा प्रश्न है, in your studies related to effect of yoga on arthritis, were all the patients practicing the same set of yoga asanas?
Yes, we have a trained yoga instructor here who's actually, and they have a set protocol by which they practice. But when we have rheumatoid arthritis, it's a very severe crippling arthritis. So initially they start with loosening practices, and then they go on to do the other asanas. For example, initially they practice, for example, in kriyas they do Kapal Bharati, Basti Kriya. And for asanas, initially there's simple joint movements which increase the flexibility and the range of movement so that the joints become less painful. And initially then they go on to do Pavan Muktasana, Bhujangasana, Tarasana, and then they do pranayam like Bhastrika, Nadi Shodhan. And then for meditation, we make them do Yog Nidra.
जी, एक और प्रश्न है मैडम। ये तो पहला वाला प्रश्न तो ये तो था ये गोपाल अयंगर सर का। अभी अगला प्रश्न है, how yoga can help in treating cancers?
See, the cancer is a disease of the genome and the epigenome. There are a number of factors which cause it, but one of the key studies which have now shown that cancer is caused by a dysregulation of the epigenome, and oxidative stress actually dysregulates the epigenome. It causes hypomethylation of the genome. Now, when there is hypomethylation of the genome, it causes unmasking of the repetitive elements, and the genome becomes highly unstable with complex chromosomal translocations. And so there is dysregulation of the genome and the epigenome. And though more studies are required, but definitely in the management, yoga will help. It will help to decrease the pain perception. It will help in better management. The patient will be able to fare better. It helps to build up resilience. But what I was trying to show you was that when you have childhood cancers and there is high level of DNA damage in the father's sperm, which it is not able to rectify, this DNA damage is transferred to the child, which actually results in high incidence of childhood cancers. And therefore, if the DNA quality improves by practicing yoga, you can prevent the onset of genetic and epigenetic diseases in the next generation.
Madam, next question is, hello. हेलो,
हाँ जी हाँ जी.
हाँ मैडम, नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन है, इज देयर स्पेशल योगा टू क्योर डायबिटीज?
Actually, when I talk of yoga, it means asanas, pranayam, as well as meditation. Definitely, you need to do it you have to learn yoga from a trained instructor. You have to tell them what are the problems you have. For diabetes, there would be a set of asanas, pranayam, as well as a meditation which you need to do, and there are already set protocols which are there in the website of Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga. And yoga also helps to regulate your emotional eating and other points, like because it's a metabolic disease, it's a complex disease, yoga will help definitely a lot, and there are protocols for the management of yoga. Yes.
One more question, madam, whether diabetes can be reversed as per Dr. Tripathi, somebody has written.
See, as I told you, if it is type 2 diabetes, which is a complex lifestyle disease, it is because of unhealthy habits and a sedentary lifestyle. If you practice a healthy lifestyle, you practice yoga, you regulate your eating, you have whole plant-based foods, you regulate your caloric intake, have a nutrient-dense food, you can definitely manage diabetes, type 2 diabetes.
Madam, one more question is there. What are the benefits of deep breathing?
What are the, okay. See, the deep breathing plays a very important role. The whole impact, the whole reason why we do yoga is so that we do asanas to bring our body in alignment, especially our trunk, so that the spine retains its curvature. Then we do pranayam so that we can enter into a meditative state. And that is mainly the main aim of yoga. Now, when we do pranayam, especially when we do deep breathing, there are a number of olfactory receptors, and they actually stimulate ultimately a limbic lobe and the subcortical centers and the brainstem. And this helps to regulate various centers and cause parasympathetic dominance, which are the system for DNA repair and rest. So that is how there is parasympathetic dominance, and this is how that's the mode of action of yoga. So it helps to bring about voluntary control over involuntary functions. I hope I've answered your question.
जी, धन्यवाद मैडम, धन्यवाद, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैडम, बहुत बहुत आभार आपका। और अब हमारे प्रश्न समाप्त हो गए हैं। अगर कोई प्रश्न आएगा तो बाद में भी हम आपसे संपर्क करेंगे। तो YouTube के माध्यम से जुड़ने वाले सभी मित्रों को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और गोपाल अयंगर साहब का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद इस कार्यक्रम में शामिल हुए। हमारे संस्थान के निदेशक प्रोफेसर रविशंकर नंजुंडिया सर, उनका भी मैं आभार व्यक्त करता हूं शामिल होने के लिए। डॉक्टर रीमा दादा जी, जिन्होंने बहुत ही सूचनापरक, बहुत सुंदर व्याख्यान दिया और हमारे तमाम शंकाओं और तमाम प्रश्नों के उत्तर दिए, उनका बहुत बहुत आभार। उसके बाद भव्या खन्ना जी, जिन्होंने इस कार्यक्रम के आयोजन के लिए मंत्रालय से अगुवाई की, पहल की, उनका भी बहुत बहुत आभार व्यक्त करता हूं। और हमारे अजीत प्रसाद जी, प्रशासनिक अधिकारी IITM से, जिनका सानिध्य हमें सदैव इन सारे कार्यक्रमों में मिलता रहता है। आप सभी को आभार, धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।
नमस्कार मैडम, नमस्कार सभी को, धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।